now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today.
Better get the coleslaw, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue.
A lot of people all over the world are getting upset over a Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdami becoming the next mayor of New York. However, there is a bright spot for all of us who are B1 in this election, and it really just shows us a major crack in the system of white supremacy. Now, what a lot of people didn't notice as the campaign for mayor in New York City was going on was that your blue and red parties, for 1 minute, showed us that they were both two wings on the same dirty bird, and they were starting to get desperate because they were starting to see how they were losing influence due to their polarization of the masses. Now, that was shown to us early in the campaign in the last days, where President Donald Trump was out here offering a job to Eric Adams to be the ambassador of Saudi Arabia, and also making offers to Curtis Sliwa to drop out of the race. And that really showed me that the white supremacists were starting to get desperate because they know they basically had lost the plot as related to America. And as they lost the plot as related to America, they wanted to try to regain control. Now, when it comes to these white supremacists, like Professor Black Truth has stated, they are extremely hypersensitive when they start to see their power and influence start to wane. And that was shown to us in the 2020 uprisings during the pandemic after the murder of George Floyd, which showed us the first crack in the system of white supremacy, where they thought they were going to be able to control the masses with this pandemic. However, the death of George Floyd basically just wound up energizing black masses to go out into the streets, and that basically wound up having many of these white supremacists scrambling because they really started to see how much power they had lost over the people. And the same thing was shown to me when I started to see both the red and blue parties looking to go out here and looking to work together to try to prevent the election of Zoran Mamdami, because they really realized that they had basically were losing the plot over the influence of the masses, and they lost the influence over the masses basically because of their own complacency. Now, the big problem with these white supremacists over the last, I'd say, 60 years is that they have become extremely complacent, and they've become extremely complacent because they did not understand how to maintain their power. No, they've basically become to the place where they think they're going to go on forever, and that's shown in the mindset and thinking of many of these baby boomers who are basically looking like the Achilles heel to white supremacy. These baby boomers, like those who are like Andrew Cuomo, basically do not really understand how to maintain power, and this is why you're seeing a lot of these guys basically losing their minds, like the Orange Man, because they know that they basically screwed up as related to maintaining the power base of white supremacy. Now, when it came down to these individuals, again, many of these individuals were basically raised with the idea that they would be able to go on forever, and they think that since they've got theirs, they can basically screw everybody else. But what they don't understand is how deeply they screwed up as related to maintaining their system of white supremacy. They've basically screwed up because in order to, again, maintain power, you have to focus on your legacy. And sadly, when it came down to many of these baby boomers, they don't really think about their legacy because they have this idea of they're going to, one, go on forever, and two, they think because they've got theirs, they don't have to care about the next man. And since they don't really think that they are going to, again, be removed from power due to their own mortality, they haven't really thought about their legacy. Now, when it comes to these baby boomers, again, they never really thought about their legacy, and they really have not gone out here and started developing and training their successors like many people used to do when kingdoms were run. I mean, in every kingdom, there was always somebody looking to, again, prepare a son to take over for them. And even with God's biblical leaders like Moses and David, he basically did prepare, they always prepared a successor to keep the word of God going. Unfortunately, in this pop culture of America, many of our politicians and businessmen are not really that forward thinking, and with them not being very forward thinking, what's happening in America is that you have a lot of guys who now are realizing that their legacies of power are not going to be able to go on, and now they're scrambling, basically looking for a way to try to maintain their system of white supremacy, and that's what got them shook over the Mamdami election. That's what really got them shook, is that they realized, hey, we basically screwed up. And that was what they did with this election. They truly screwed up, because usually these socialist candidates can't even get any sort of traction whatsoever. And that's because these people have basically groomed successors to take over for the previous man, and they've got many successors ready to take the place of one when one winds up falling and failing. Unfortunately, here in New York, what happened is that nobody thought about the bigger picture, and people really haven't been thinking about the bigger picture ever since the failure of Hillary Clinton in 2016 to secure the presidency on the blue side. They really haven't been thinking about, again, preparing a successor ever since Hillary failed to win the election, and that led to the orange man basically being able to come in. And that's been a big problem with those in both the blue and the red party, in that they haven't really been thinking about, again, developing that successor from Generation X or millennials to be there to represent their ideals. And that's where they basically, again, made the big mistake that basically has them scrambling at this point, because they had, during the time of the 80s and the 90s, you had guys like Charlie Rangel, again, not thinking about the future, because they thought, hey, I've got this job for 20, 30 years, but didn't think about the future after that. And that was shown to us also with the death of Senator Dianne Feinstein, again, the first female senator of California, didn't think to go out here and prepare or train a successor to take over her position in the Senate. No, nobody thought about making plans for the future, and now that time is starting to come up. And that's why you see a lot of these white supremacists on the left and the right getting nervous and starting to scramble, because they see that their power base is starting to erode. They're starting to see their power base start to erode, and they're starting to see that their legacy may not go on like they expected. And again, that was shown to us because I'm looking at this country, and again, the whole way they picked Joe Biden to become president. Now, Joe Biden basically was somebody they, again, picked up and dusted off, hoping that he would basically be a good fit as related to things. But it really showed me, again, that crack in their system as related to not going out here and developing and training successors. Again, Joe Biden was an old man who basically is looking like he had dementia, but they had to go out here and get him because they did not prepare anyone else younger to take that position. And that's where the Blue Party basically screwed up as related to the last election, and were basically scrambling with Kamala Harris, who again was somebody who was not fit for office, and again wound up losing that election because they did not go out here and actively prepare or train a successor to take the place of anyone as related to things. Now, they thought Hillary could be that successor, but she failed to, again, be there, and they didn't have another person in place But that just shows again how much people in this country, due to their complacency, have taken their system for granted. And as they've taken their system for granted, they basically have shown again a major Achilles heel in the American governmental system. Now, again, going and using it the Hillary Clinton analogy, I'm going to talk about what happened in New York, because the same thing happened here. Nobody prepared or trained a successor, and as they did not prepare or train a successor after the deliberate campaign to make Eric Adams a failure, because the reason why they wanted Eric Adams to be a failure was to cover the failures of Bill de Blasio in the system of white supremacy. Now, Bill de Blasio was a certified failure and a certified screw-up, and what white supremacy loves to do is go out here and get a black person and have them screw up even more so that they can look, the white person can look more competent in comparison. Now, when they do these campaigns like they did in the past with David Dinkins and Rudy Giuliani, and in the case of Barack Obama and George W. Bush, they try to have a great white successor, but the whole problem is that whole plan has been falling apart. First, it fell apart after Obama basically messed up, and they wanted to go out here and use Hillary Clinton to try to be the cleanup woman, but then the orange man wound up winning. And in this case, the same thing happened, where you had this Andrew Cuomo basically brought out and again presented as this great white hope, but nobody was buying into that, because we were already told that this white man was caught up in sexual harassment. And with him being caught up in sexual harassment, he basically wasn't going to be able to get the female vote in any way, shape, or form. And with the city basically being changed because many of the longtime residents leaving the city, this basically left the whole thing open and wide open for another opportunist to come in. And that's where white supremacy started to get nervous in the last couple of months of this election. And that's where we saw both the red and blue parties working behind the scenes, hoping to go out here and hoping to thwart the election of Zoran Mamdami. Again, that's where we saw a major crack in the system of white supremacy, where we saw both wings on the dirty bird flapping to try to save their semblance of control, trying to flap to save their semblance of control as related to things, because what they see is a major chink in their armor behind the scenes as related to the succession of power in the system of white supremacy. They see a major chink in their power because they see that the baby boomer white supremacists failed at their job because they were so caught up in the cares of life to think about their legacies, think about the legacy of white supremacy, and go out here and prepare and train successors to take their place in maintaining their system of power. That's what the whole election of Zoran Mamdani has many of them upset, because here you have this socialist again infiltrating this capitalist system of America, and that's all due to the incompetence of the baby boomer generation and the silent generation to a point in preparing and training a successor, training and preparing successors to take their place and maintain their system of power. And again, this is what you had guys like Elon Musk and many billionaires again endorsing Andrew Cuomo, going and again shifting from their positions. Again, you had Donald Trump endorsing Andrew Cuomo. Again, this showed the desperation as related to the system of white supremacy, the desperation that the white supremacists had, because the white supremacist knows that they're starting to lose even more control in the aftermath of the 2020 riots with George Floyd, where they started to lose control, and they know that they're starting to lose even more control. But this is where FBA have to again understand that this is why we stay on course. We stay on course with our demands to demand tangibles in exchange for votes, because these people are basically at a point where they are in desperation. They're in desperation as related to maintaining their system of power because of these failures of the baby boomer generation. The baby boomer generation, basically, again, they got theirs, but they've basically screwed the system of white supremacy. They've basically screwed the system of white supremacy because they were not, again, having their focus on the ball because they got caught up and distracted. And as they got caught up and distracted in living the cares of their lives, of looking to keep black people at the bottom, they basically started their own demise because you can't maintain a system of power unless you have people trained to take the place of the previous people who were in charge and understand the culture of maintaining what they had. That's where they basically made a serious mistake, and now they're scrambling to try to fix that mistake, trying to scramble on both sides because both the red and the blue parties know they've lost the plot. They've lost the plot because the average American knows that they can't really make ends meet these days. They can't really enjoy that life of that American dream, and they can't enjoy that life of that American dream under the system of white supremacy because we've got a bunch of old individuals who were complacent, and as they were complacent, they basically thought they were going to go on forever. But now many of those individuals are dying out. Many of those institutions and corporations are going out of business, and many of these institutions are falling apart, like Hollywood right now. Hollywood is a crumbling institution of the media arm of white supremacy, and they're losing their influence over the masses, and they're losing their influence to maintain the entire power base. And again, this is all that happened under the hand of one generation, the baby boomers, who basically again took their position in life for granted, got caught up like in the cares of life, similar to what happened with the fall of the Roman Empire. The same thing happened with the fall of the Roman Empire. People got caught up in their decadence, they got comfortable and they got complacent, and as they were going out here getting comfortable, this is where the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths wound up taking control by invading the country because the people there basically took their existence for granted. And what's happening now is that the American system of white supremacy, again, has given many of these races, again, a sense of complacency for many years. And what's happened now is you've got these folks scrambling to try to maintain their power. And that's where, again, the whole election of Zoran Mamdami has a lot of them upset. They already know that he's a tool similar to Obama, but the whole idea, again, of them losing control, this is what's got them really nervous. Again, like Professor Black Truth has said, the white supremacists are hypersensitive. They know they have lost the plot. They know they have lost influence over the masses, and they know that their institutions are crumbling as related to maintaining that control. Their media arm of Hollywood is crumbling as we speak in influencing the masses. Their political power is starting to wane as related to maintaining their influence because, again, you have people who are too old and too complacent in power, and they know that with this they're losing more and more control, and they're starting to get desperate. Again, that's what we saw when we saw both sides working together, both the blue and the red party working together to try to stop Zoran Mamdami because they know that the influence of white supremacy is starting to wane, and that's where we in the B1 community, we have to maintain our resolve because we're not concerned about the entire thing. We're only concerned about our tangibles like reparations and an anti-black hate crime law. That's what we're focused on. We're focused on our goals, and we could care who gives us what we want. It's all about us getting what we're supposed to get. But sadly, many, again, people, they don't see the bigger picture as related to the subtle politics transpiring around them. And the subtle politics transpiring around them is basically that this system of white supremacy has been falling apart ever since about the 20 teens. It's been falling apart and starting to, again, starting to show its cracks, and as those cracks get shown, basically we're starting to see the facade of American white supremacy start to fall apart. Now, if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com and other online booksellers. And if you want to see me make more videos talking about the subtle politics transpiring around us, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Get your copy of ISIS, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl. The aspiring angel takes on a wicked teenage witch in this action-packed, all-new Esteemed series adventure. Pick up your copy of Esteemed Season of the Witch Girl in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.